welcome back to another episode of Meet the Creatives. Today I am joined by the one and only Joe Duffy. Joe, thanks for coming on today. Greatly appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah,
it's good to be here.
Duffy has been around for 30 years. A lot of people know the name. A lot of people are familiar with the work you guys have created. And I know that you've certainly influenced a lot of people over those 30 years, and myself included. And one of the people that you influenced a lot was actually Brian Collins. And I know of your work because of Brian Collins. I was always, asking him. Brian was a mentor to me, and I was asking him, who are people along the way that really influenced him and whose work that I should kind of look into. And Joe Duffy was always one of the first answers. So Brian says his regards and says to say hello.
Same back to him. Brian's a great guy and an incredibly talented designer.
Yeah, for sure. So who are some of the people along that same line? Who are some of the people that inspired you and people who kind of made a shift in your thinking and got you really excited about design? Who are those people along the way?
My path to design was really kind of a winding road. I started out as a fine artist, majored in painting when I was in school. Couldn't make enough money as a painter, so I ended up becoming an illustrator and then a sign painter, and then an art director. Got involved in advertising, worked for an advertising agency, and then eventually became a partner in an advertising agency in Minneapolis back in the early 80s. And then wanted to get back at getting my hands dirty again because I was really an artist, and art direction didn't fill that desire. So I decided to leave my advertising agency and form a design company. And it just so happened my friend Pat Fallon had recently started an advertising agency in Minneapolis, and they did incredible creative advertising. And they decided that every time they took on a design project for one of their clients that was an advertising client, he said they'd screw it up.
Right.
So he asked if I would start a company with him and the other three partners of Fallon, and keep it separate and yet be compatible and work on design and advertising together. And that was the beginning of Duffy Design back in 1984. And before I did that, I thought, what the hell? I'm going to call two of my favorite designers and ask if I could come to their studio and see how they work and how they were set up, et cetera. So I had the balls to call Milton Glaser, was my hero. I did the same thing with Woody Pirtle, who had a design company in Dallas at the time. And the reason I was so in love with their work is that they were really artists in my mind. So much of their design was based on their illustrative, artistic capabilities in creating anything from a poster to a record album to an identity or what have you. So that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to create design, but I wanted to bring art into it and actually do that kind of rendering and art on my own in order to make sure that, the design in the end was a piece of art that I created.
Right. That's so cool. And it must be so kind of neat because at the time, I read in your How Design article, at the time, that wasn't the norm, and it was, nowadays it's kind of commonplace for that to happen, illustrators and the field of illustration and freelance designers, and it's all so competitive. And for people in my generation, it's kind of the norm. But why was it that design and advertising, as it were, got so far away from the hand drawn, the tactile? Why did that had it always been that way, or did it at one point when advertising was getting bigger, it just they went their separate ways?
I think that both advertising and design back in the 70s and 80s were more about calling upon our creative people from the outside, whether they be filmmakers or illustrators or photographers, to take a concept for an ad or a design for that matter, and basically art direct someone, an artist from the outside, and tell them how you wanted the art to be so that it would then become your design. And that's still true today. I mean, obviously, designers and art directors from all over the world utilize creative people from outside of their own company
Right.
in order to get something done the way they want it done. To me, it's always been why I admired Woody and Milton so much is that they had the artistic ability and sensibilities to actually create the work themselves. And to this day, we use people on the outside to help us execute something if it isn't a style that we can accommodate within our studio.
Right.
So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do. It's just that I've always loved being able to literally be hands-on in the creation of the actual design.
Yeah, but who are some of the other agencies that you've seen that are kind of following along that same line?
Oh, I admire so many different design companies and advertising agencies. On the advertising side, a few of my favorites are Wyden and Kennedy. I think they do amazing work, both when it comes to everything from TV spots to print and outdoor and social media, etc. I love their work. I also really admire Goodby in San Francisco. I think they do amazing advertising. On the design side, I've always been a big fan of Pentagram. I've always admired their work.
Sent many applications to Pentagram.
Yeah, from all their offices. So many great designers in that partnership. I love seeing their work, and I love seeing the diversity of style within that one partnership. It's really great.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of credit Pentagram as being one of the agencies where I kind of, as a design, when you're in design school, there's the moment where you start looking up. It's like, we'll look into places that you might want to work. And I remember the first time I saw the work of Pentagram and Emily Oberman and Michael Beirut and Michael Garrick and Natasha Jen and all those people wanting to be my end goal being one of the New York designers. They are kind of they are, as far as I'm concerned, they are one of the people definitely setting the bar. So I agree with you on all them. Wyden and Kennedy, good choices all around. Good choices. In your interview with How Design, there's a quote that I really like, and it says, "Good clients continually go to people who do good work." Just letting the kind of work stand for itself. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think the choices you make in the business of design relative to partnerships with clients, good or bad, really shape your portfolio of work, which obviously has everything in the world to do with how good you can become as a company. To me, it's we have a conversation with any prospective client, and at the outset, we ask the kinds of questions that I think make it pretty obvious whether or not we're going to be able to do work for them that we'll be proud of in the end. Right. It's unfortunately all the clients out there are not good clients, and you have to ask the right questions. Right. And then you have to have the right standards in order to make sure that you're not working with a client who is going to force you to do work that is beneath you, that in effect is bad design. To me, it's like it's putting the quality of your work and the happiness that provides ahead of making the most amount of money. Right. I've always felt that way, and I've also always felt that one of the problems with the design business is that too many people are in it for having a job and making money, as opposed to having a great life and doing work that you're proud of.
Right, for sure. Do you feel that, has there ever been a time where, you were really excited about the idea of working with a certain brand and then the leadership was not what you expected? Or usually when a company is doing great things, you can kind of tell?
It's actually a very good question, because you never really know.
Right.
We've gone to work for clients who have in the past done really good design for their product or their service or what have you, and they've been impossible to work with because of the individuals involved. There are times when, it's a political issue so many times, particularly with big companies, where some individuals in the marketing department or even in the design department want to be able to say, I did that, or that was my choice, or I contributed to this design and whatnot. So we have figured out a way to make sure that we get input from the client, all of the clients, at the right time, at the outset of the creative process. We work together, we create a visual brief off of their verbal brief, we select images, we create a collage, we do that all together. And then our expectation is, and we explain this, is that they will then allow us off that visual brief, which we use as a filter through which to make design decisions, which they've helped create, that they will then allow us as the designers to do the design directions. More often than not, that works. Right. But we also have a clause in our agreements with all of our clients that says, if we reach an impasse and we're unable to come to an agreement based on what you have hired us to do, then we will turn over all the work we've done to date. You will pay us for all the work that we've done to date, and we'll say goodbye. Right. And that has had to happen more often than I'd like to admit.
Right.
It certainly doesn't happen in the majority of cases, but I'd say, over the years, and maybe 10 to 15 of the relationships that we formed with our clients, 10 to 15% of the time we've had to use that clause and say, I'm sorry, we're unable to do our best work for you because of your expectations or your involvement in this. Right. And it has to be a partnership. Every client knows much more about their company, about their brands, about their products than we do. But at the same time, we are the designers that they've hired in order to create design. So it has to be a back and forth, a give and take. We have to get the right input, but at the end of the day, we need to do the design as opposed to a client saying, no, I want it to look just like this.
Right. But what have been some of the most, over 30 years, what projects do you find, or what kinds of projects do you find most meaningful?
One of the things I love most about what I do as a designer is the fact that it's something different every day. I was just going through all the projects that we're working on right now, and we're working on about 10 or 12 of them. Wow. And they are all so diverse. There's a spirits brand, and there's a fast food brand, and there's a marijuana brand, and there's another food brand. I mean, so it's the diversity that makes the job so interesting, because you can pass from one to another and the next, and have this kind of really learning experience in all of these different categories, with all of these different audiences, with all of these different competitive sets, with all these different cultures. And so what I love most is taking that deep dive and getting involved in learning about a culture. We've been doing some work in the Middle East, in Qatar, and it's been work that's involved with transforming their economy from a gas-driven economy to a knowledge-based economy. And it's been absolutely fascinating learning about a completely different, very strange, by the way, culture, so different from our own. So that's been fascinating. Way back when, we literally branded a country, the islands of the Bahamas.
Right.
And
going there for my honeymoon.
I always good for you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right where to go, too.
Awesome.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's great. I always tell everyone, it was January in Minnesota, and we were asked to come down to the Bahamas and visit all 14 of their destinations. And I asked for volunteers, and everybody thought that was a pretty good idea. So we did that. We learned about everything from the big islands and the luxury resorts to the little outposts and the fishing villages and so on. And to learn about a culture like that and in such a beautiful environment, and then to come up with ideas that lend themselves to the amazing experience you can have by traveling to the islands of the Bahamas was one of my all-time favorite projects. It was great.
So one of the purposes of this podcast is for me, not only me, to ask questions and get to find out career steps, but also to kind of talk to people like yourself and get a better understanding of what you're looking for and things like that. So when you're seeking out designers to join your team, for full-time positions and, senior designers, art directors, anywhere there, what are some of the characteristics that you're looking for?
Yeah, I from day one, and this is literally 33 years ago now, I was always looking for designers who I felt were better than I am, right, or at least had the potential to be better than I am, or I was. And so that's kind of a general overview. We've been fortunate because of our reputation to attract very talented young designers from programs all over the world. And I kind of look at it as a 50-50 proposition. 50% of it is amazing artistic talent, creativity, the ability to come up with great ideas and to be able to draw them, render them, to work them in rough form, and then to be able to finesse them so that they become amazing designs. So that's 50% of the proposition. And we can pretty much tell that based on a portfolio. We can see the work online, and we know if they have that amazing artistic, creative design talent, then we're going to want to meet them. And then the other 50% comes in. I want to hire people that I literally will enjoy going into work and working with every day. So, their human skills, their ability to collaborate with other people, their attitude, their outlook on life. I have worked in the past with a lot of very sullen and difficult people, and I don't want that. I've never wanted it, but it happens sometimes. So that also enables these young designers to become the kind of salespeople that they need to become in order to be successful in the business of design. It's one thing to come up with a great design. It's another thing to be able to convince a client, as well as the people you're working with, that it is the right thing to do. And so that's really critical. So I look at those two sides.
Right. So when people bring to you their portfolios, I'm sure that you're constantly inundated with people wanting to work for you, and graduates and people submitting to you. What are some of the holes you see in people's games? What are some of the things you see that are lacking, or things you kind of see over and over again?
I think the thing that is most often lacking is the diversity of projects and executions of those projects. I mean, brand design today is so diverse as far as what you need to create in terms of applications of an identity. Most of the projects that we work on, virtually all of the projects that we work on, are either the revitalization of an existing identity or the creation of a brand new identity for a product, a company, or a service. And what those all require are extensive brand languages that are not just a logo and not just a brochure, not just a website. It's literally a brand language that can accommodate all aspects of every point of contact with the target audience. So we're dealing in social media, we're dealing with web design, we're dealing with traditional design and packaging, the brand identity and how it's going to affect things like trade exhibits, or office spaces or store design and all those different things. So I think the thing that is most often lacking is a full range that covers that broad spectrum of design applications that tell me that here's someone who can do it all, because that's what we're looking for.
Right, for sure. There's been a lot of talk recently about self-generated work. That's kind of coming into, in the past it was kind of hard to do, but now, it's so easy to get your work out there with Instagram or with, a podcast like this and things like that. And a lot of people that I ask these questions to refer to, self-generated work. What's your take on all that? Or can sometimes just the diversity within their portfolio stand alone without being a representation of themselves? You know what I mean?
I think the more you do, the better. I think the more that you are involved in the kind of thing that you're conducting right now, the more valuable you become, because coming up with ideas like this in order to, propel the whole notion of great design among your peers is a brilliant idea. I love it.
Thank you.
I think that the idea of, doing a podcast or doing a website or doing any form of design generation on your part that is going to get out there on social media and that is going to make a difference in terms of making your feelings known is a really, really good thing. I love self-generated design applications. It's great.
When I first started this podcast, I didn't really think that I just thought, I'm going to interview people and maybe people will enjoy it or like it. And then I didn't really think of that as design. This podcast has led me to realize that design is communication. Why is it that communication is almost like left out? I don't understand that.
I think it's short-sighted on people's parts, and I think obviously there are a lot of design programs out there that are kind of have their head in the past as opposed to looking forward.
Right.
I think it's all about ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, it gets down to things like what color am I going to use? What is the logo going to look like? What kind of typeface is appropriate for this design? All those things are absolutely critical. But we had a restaurant client recently that didn't know what they wanted, and they just knew that they had various restaurants in different neighborhoods, and they wanted to ingratiate themselves among the neighbors in that particular neighborhood. And one of our young designers came up with the idea, what if we did a contest?
Right.
Where people could we create this really cool little kiosk.
Oh, with the chips.
In the restaurant. With the chips.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And it was like, what a brilliant idea. It didn't, and obviously we ended up creating the identity and putting it on the chips and designing the exhibit so that it, or the machine that you voted in, to have the branded look and all of that. But the concept behind coming up with that idea in order to generate enthusiasm for their audience, the neighbors, was absolutely brilliant. So thinking like that, thinking out of the box, out of the normal design executions and applications is really, really smart. And every young designer who's doing that is going to have a much easier time of getting the job they want. What we all need to remember is that design isn't business. Design is life. And you learn about doing the best possible design by living your life, by getting out there and experiencing things, as opposed to going through books of design that's been done in the past or whatever.
Right.
It's all about everyday life, and striking a balance between working as a designer and living as a designer is really, really critical, because as you know, and all designers know, sometimes you come up with your absolute best ideas while you're out riding your bike or walking your dog or cross-country skiing or what have you.
Yeah.
You never stop thinking about design, because
Right.
it is literally not your job, it is your life. Everything you do is about design.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, going back to your earlier question, what kind of people are we looking for to come to work at Duffy? And I want that. I want people who live design as opposed to people who just want a job.
Right.
Because if that's all there is to it, you're not going to be as good as you can be. You literally have to live a designed life, and not just go to work as a designer.
So I've heard you saying about in previous interviews about not settling. Don't do anything that's beneath you. Don't do anything that's not work you can be hang on the wall and be proud of. When you're trying to get a foot in the door and you need to pay bills, you need to do things, and a lot of people say, well, I need to have a job, or I need to stay with this company because I need to pay my bills. But they know that they don't like what they're doing. What would your advice be to those people without blowing up the whole thing, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I know people have to make a living, particularly when they're starting out. They have to get their foot in the door and start generating some real design work as opposed to just a student portfolio. My advice to them is that if they have to take a job in design, like at a department store or some kind of in-house arrangement where they're not allowed to do work that they're really proud of, keep looking, Right. Do the best possible work that you can do, but constantly have your ear to the ground in order to find the kind of situation where you are going to be able to generate your best work you're proud of. Because in the end, that's what's going to make you not only a successful designer, but a successful person. Right. And there's nothing worse, and believe me, I've known so many people in my life who couldn't stand going to work every day. They just dreaded it. Even some who made all kinds of money, they couldn't stand working. So they imagine getting up in the morning and not wanting to go to work and spend the majority of your day doing things that you really don't want to do.
I feel like I also feel too like a lot of people work at that job and say, "Oh, they'll never respond," or "I'm not worthy of working there." I'm kind of a big believer in reaching out to your mentors and saying, like, "Hey, what do I need to do to work here?"
It's when I called up Milton Glaser and Woody Purtle, I thought they're probably just going to laugh at me. They mm-hmm. both invited me to come to their studio, mm-hmm. and both told me how they work, took me through projects that they were working on. I was your age.
Yeah.
And so it's like you've got to be bold. You've got to be willing to go out there and test the waters and really fight for your ability to do great work.
Did you have any other experiences like that where you reached out to people of that caliber and people like in your young career? Who did you reach out to other than Milton and them?
I made it a point from the time I started Duffy Design to really get out there and socialize with designers. And fortunately, we had projects that took us to different cities around the United States. So whenever I did, like I'd go to San Francisco and I'd call up the Michaels at that time, Michael right. Cronin and Michael Vanderbyle and Michael Mabry. They were the hottest designers in the country at the time. I called them up, but I said, "Hey, I just started a design studio in Minneapolis. Always admired your work. I wondered if I could stop by. Can I buy you a beer, whatever?" And early in my career, I did that everywhere. When I went to New York, when I went to Chicago, when I went to Miami, San Francisco, LA, whatever, I would always contact those people that I admired. And fortunately, because of organizations like AIGA and other design groups that I've been a part of, going to conferences and going and speaking at different AIGA chapters around the country, that has enabled me to meet a lot of my peers and a lot of the people that whose work I admire. And you got to socialize, and you really have to stay on top of who's doing what, and to make sure that you're connected to the design community, because obviously, it goes in trends and it flows in different directions, and staying on top of it, regardless of your age, I think is a really, really good thing. So get out there and meet people and see what others are doing.
I want to talk about like packaging design, because I love your packaging design work, especially the work that you do with Fisher Price and then Fresh Start, is it called? What's the other one?
Bright Starts.
Yes, beautiful work. I'm not really sure why. I just think I'm a big fan of like bright and bold colors. So like when I see the children's packaging, it looks so fun. And that's on my bucket list of things to do. But then you also work with all kinds of different ones. But you also work with like craft beer and things like that. how is it difficult, like when working with multiple clients, to transition from one to the other, because they're so different? I mean, your website, from one to the other, they're completely different. When you do that
Yeah.
during the course of the day, what's that like, or is that really fun?
You know, it's, as I mentioned early on, it's one of the things I love about design. But we're working on 12 different projects, and each one is very, very different and unique from the next. And so, on the one hand, you kind of have to think in different ways depending on the audience and the category and the competitors and all of that. What it's going to look like on a shelf at a liquor store versus what it's going to look like on a shelf in a toy department.
Right.
It's extremely different. And yet, the choices that you make relative to colors and shapes and typefaces and physical designs and how it's printed and all those things, they end up informing those same kinds of decisions that you're making for something in another category.
Right.
So, in other words, the learning experience that you have in one category, like toys, has something to do with what you're going to need to know in order to do the best kind of package design in a completely different category.
Right.
And it's to me, I think the best design becomes the most unique design, because it isn't just about the photograph or the logo or the colors or whatever. It's about all those things crafted in a way that will separate it from all of the competitors on any kind of shelf. That's what package design is all about.
Right.
To me, it's like, how can it draw you from 30 feet away because it's the most unique shape or it's differentiated from a distance?
Right.
And then how can it, when you get up close to it, make you want to literally pick it up and feel it and touch it and turn it around
Right.
and whatnot? To me, that's the most successful package design, and it's true in any category. And so you learn from the experiences that you have by creating in one category and bring those to another.
Right. Just a quick question on that. So, like, I've heard a lot of conversations. I know Brian Collins mentioned about, live with me versus like buy me brands. I'm not sure if I'm getting the expression right there, but
Yeah,
one is like Windex and the other one's like Method. You know what I mean? So one of them you
yeah,
want to have displayed in your home. The other one you kind of put underneath the kitchen sink. Do you
right.
feel that that package design is now going towards what's the best design, or is there still a valuable market for standing out? You know how I mean?
I think, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I think it really has to accomplish both. It has to stand apart.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, we did classical pasta sauce back in 1985. It's changed since then. But when we did it, it was a matter of crafting something that people would actually want to save after they were finished with it,
Right.
and use it to put pencils in or to put coffee in or whatever. We made
Yeah.
this amazing jar, this mason jar with a really cool label on top. And what we wanted was to make sure that people would actually want to have that in their home, and that's why they were drawn to it. It was a great product, but it was also something that they would like to have on their shelf, in their refrigerator or whatever. And it's the same thing with the spirits brands we do. A big part of it is, what is it going to look like on your bar top,
Yeah.
or on your shelf? I mean, we did recently a line of super premium rums for Bacardi,
Yeah.
and I can't tell you, I mean, they're like $250 a bottle,
Right.
but people use them almost as centerpieces as opposed to just something that holds this amazing product. And I think that's one of the fun things about doing packaging. It's something that it has to be utilitarian, it has to be appropriate, it has to be affordable and whatnot, but it also has to be something that people are drawn to because they want to fit it into their lifestyle, not
Right.
just tuck it away and put it under
Right.
under the sink.
Now I think design has to do much more, but do you think that design has to bring joy to people? And do you think that that's possible? Or do we think that way because we're designers?
No, I think it literally does bring joy to people. They're drawn to it because they like the look of it. They like the messaging because it tells them what this product is about.
Right.
And I'll tell you today, much more so than when I was your age, millennials in particular are so articulate about design. They have great taste in design. They're willing to pay more and maybe buy less, but have it better.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think design is something that is more and more important all the time. And the practical thing for anyone who wants to hire a designer to do package design for them is to make sure that they're going to create something that will first and foremost stand out, but then people will be drawn to it and want to make it part of their day-to-day life.
Right. That's so awesome. All right, last question. That was amazing. I love that last part. That's going to be in the best of clips for sure. So over 30 years, one of the things you talk about is maintaining perspective. As you reflect on your design career and the legacy that you've built and continue to build, what's your perspective now on design and on life, and what are some of the biggest things you've learned over this amazing journey you've had?
Well, the most important thing I learned was that it isn't a job. It's about my life. I'm fortunate in that I lead a relatively small company. My children are my partners. They were literally brought up in the design world. And the reason they got into design is because they saw how much I loved it. They saw how much I enjoyed doing it. And so both my daughter Bridget and my son Joseph have been my partners for 20 years. And it's great. That's another joy that I have. And I think, to me, it all comes back to what we were talking about earlier. You have to wake up in the morning and really be excited. And you have to be able to go out for a walk and be thinking about the work that you're doing. And you have to strike a balance between all the things that you love to do in your life. I love to get outdoors, come up to this cabin, go cross-country ski or go fishing or ride my bike and being with my grandchildren and my kids. All that stuff is, in so many respects, more important to me than my business.
Right.
And so striking a balance between what you do for a living and all the things that you enjoy doing in your life, I think is absolutely, absolutely critical. Right. And that's the thing that I've learned over time. And I think the older you get, the more apparent it becomes. You only have so much time on this earth, and you have to be able to enjoy what you do in relation to your family, your friends, but also in relationship to what you do for your living. And I couldn't stress enough emphasizing that you're working at things that you love doing with people that you love being with, and it's going to make your life that much more rewarding, that much more valuable.
Absolutely. And everything that you just said, it's funny because when I quit my job and kind of gave up that steadiness and just kind of leaped into the arms of complete strangers looking for that sense of community that would kind of reassure me that kind of thing was possible, it was there. And that's been the most meaningful thing this year as I look back on the year, was that what you just said, a lot of the times your parents or the people that you work with who live in their jobs and their jobs that have been around for years, I tell them that I want to work with people that I love doing what I love, and their idea is like, well, I'm just gonna do something that will pay the bills, and I'm like, no, I'm telling you, I'm chasing that dream, and there are people out there that are going to help me get there. And for the time being, it's a little bit tough to show that because I'm so young in my career and trying to put it all together. But I know that if I'm not stopping now. I am too far invested into it, and I know that people like yourself and other people that have mentored me along the way are going to be there, and eventually one day I too will be in the log cabin. So
No, you'll get there, Rob, for
Awesome.
sure. You just have to keep fighting for it. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, this has been amazing. This is one of my favorite podcasts. I say that every time, but I always mean it. This has been so cool. And if I'm ever in Minneapolis, I'm going to have to come. Or if you're ever in New York. Right now I'm pretty broke, so the odds of you should come to New York first. So.
Yeah, I'll be there and I'll look you up. It'd be good to get together again, and I really appreciate your time today. It's been fun.
Awesome.
Great question.
I had fun too. So, Joe, thank you so much, and I greatly appreciate being here.
Great.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.